Shalom. Tomorrow is Hey Iyar, the fifth day of the month of Iyar. It is the Independence Day of Israel. Although we celebrated it yesterday on Thursday, Gimel Iyar, we did that only because it is on Shabbat, so it had to be moved up 2 days. Incidentally, tomorrow also in the secular calendar, it is the 17th day of April. It is the Independence Day of Syria. For any person that has a connection to these two countries, cannot help but wonder and be amazed by the difference in the fate and the future of these two countries. I would like to start with very brief history of Syria and compare what does it mean being independent with that of Israel. The land that comprises Syria was under the Ottoman Empire until 1920. Shortly after World War I, the Ottomans, the Turks, allied themselves with the Germans, that they lost the war. And then the great nations of that time, England and French, basically they divided the world, and the Syria and Lebanon came under the French mandate, and the British took over Transjordan and Palestine, and also of course Iraq and that part. That was, as I said, in 1920, and then there was a movement, nationalistic movement that was sweeping many nations at that part of the history, that they were against the French, and ultimately on the 17th day of April, the last French soldier left Syria, and Syria gained their independence. Right after that, the country was unstable politically. There were every few months to every few years, they had the coup d'etat revolution, and they overthrow each other. And that was the situation. There was brief period of time where they united with Egypt, and then that lasted 3 years, and then that union broke apart, and that was in 1961. In 1963, the Ba'ath, B-A-A-T-H, which means like emergence and resurgence in Arabic, was established, and in 1966 in 1963 they took over Syria. And we know that probably many of you did see the movie Spy, or Our Man in Damascus of Eli Cohen alayhi shalom, when the Amin al-Hafiz, he was the first Ba'athist president that was in Syria. And then after that, in 1966, another Ba'athist took over, and ultimately in 1970, Hafiz al-Assad, the father of the current president Bashar al-Assad, took over. And before that, from 1960, he was the defense minister, and during his tenure in the Syrian government, Syria did lose the Golan Heights because they declared war at the urgence of Nasser, the president of Egypt, and they lost the Golan Heights. So after that, he took over in 1970. After that, there was a movement by the Islamists, the Muslim Brotherhood, and in 1982 there was a bigger uprising in a town called Hama, which is in the northern part of Syria. There is a highway that runs from Aleppo to Damascus that passes by it, and Hafiz al-Assad, he did not want to have any uprising. He bombed a whole neighborhood where the Islamists were in, and they estimate that tens of thousands, the minimum of 20,000 people were killed by that bombardment. And by that time I left the country, but I heard from Syrian people that for few months after that incident, there was a highway that used to like Belt Parkway. It goes around the town of Hama. He closed that, so all the traffic from Damascus to Aleppo and vice versa had to pass by that neighborhood. So the whole Am Shma'u, so they will be afraid. And but as far as brutality as human rights, that was none of his concerns whatsoever. And after that, in the year 2000, he passed away. And in the constitution in Syria, that any president has to be 4 years old. He was Hafez, the father was grooming one of his children. His name was Basil, to be the president. However, Basil died a couple of years before his father from a car accident. And there is Bashar. The parliament, or what they call parliament in Syria, they changed the constitution in half an hour. Usually there would be in any normal country deliberation of years until forming a new constitution. Here it was very quick, and Bashar took over. And just like his father, when he took over, he was lenient with the people. He gave them some liberties, and Bashar acted the same way. However, clearly this is not his true color. His true color was shown later on, as we will see. Now, we will go forward to the year 2010. During that time, there was what they call the Arab Spring. It started in Tunisia, and then it went to Egypt and Libya and many countries. So there are people, Syrian Arab people from a city in the south called Daraa, that they demanded that the political prisoners to be released. And they did a really peaceful demonstration, and also there were some children that they drew pictures that they were not respectful to Assad. They were killed, and then the uprising spread to few cities. They were bombed ruthlessly, and then, however, this kept on going on until and there were many people who were defecting from the government, because it was really, I mean, no one was happy. They defected, and then there was full-blown civil war in the country, and the situation, the condition of the Syrian army was getting weaker and weaker. And then ultimately, the president could not help but ask for help. The first one to come to his rescue was Iran. For a few reasons. Probably one of them is religious reason, because the government in Syria is Alawi, meaning that they believe in Ali ibn Abi Talib, and also the Iran are Shia, that they believe that Ali should have been the successor of their prophet Muhammad. And but the Alawi, they go much further. They give deity like his god Ali ibn Abi Talib, which is something that the mainstream Sunni Islam they disagree vehemently with. So the Iran came and they helped him, and and uh, uh, and they clearly they still are there. They have many pockets that in Syria that they are still there, and now that was not enough. Then the Russians in 1995 came. They established presence on the coast of Syria, and they are still there. And then a year later, in 2016, the Turks came and they took also a part of northwest Syria in Idlib area, and many Kurdish area, because the Turks and the Kurds they don't get along, because the Kurds, and justly so, they are looking forward to have their own state, and a good part of that the land, the Kurdish land, is in Turkey. And then in 2014, ISIS came over. They established their capital in Raqqa, which is in Syria. So so we can see from here that now Syria is really divided into few parts. There is part that is controlled by the Russians, another one by the Turks, a third one by American forces, and there are pockets of Iranians and pro-Iranians militia, like the biggest one of them is Hezbollah of Lebanon. They are all over the Syria, and you have the Syrian government. So in brief, after 65 years, the independence was in 46. Syria is anything but independent. And what is interesting is that in the celebration or the Independence Day, they don't call it independence, they call it Jala. Jala means that departure or exit or moving out. So the concentration, the emphasis was not on who we are, what we would like to be, what we'd like to do to the nation. The emphasis is, and we don't want the French. Whatever comes after that really doesn't matter. And in fact, everyone tried to take advantage of the situation, of the vacuum that the French created for their own personal benefit. And the results of that are disastrous. I mean, it is kind of prophetic that they called it Jala because in reality the one who departed is the Syrian population themselves. A result of the civil war, more than 500,000 people died. 500,000 people died in the civil war. There are 11 million refugees. A little bit less than half of them are outside the country, and close to 6 million people are displaced inside the country. So who really was who departed is really the Syrian people themselves. Now the humanitarian situation in Syria is really heartbreaking. I remember when in 1979 when I left, the Syrian pound, the Syrian lira, there were 4 lira to the dollar. Now it is 3,100. So it is 775 fold. You can they describe people that they can afford bread. They can, for sure. Even when I was there, I as a physician I used to see cases of malnutrition, and I could not dare telling the people to eat meat to build their protein and their cell, because I do know that they could not afford it, and such an advice would only hurt them, not help them at all. But this is that is the situation. So there is destruction, there is devastation, there is hunger, there is people are in exile. The and there is no independence whatsoever. I believe they traded one. The French by many other countries, but probably the most severe dominion and control is by the government of Syria themselves. So this is a story of one Independence Day. 2 years later, in 1948, on the 5th of Iyar, it was Friday afternoon. Ben Gurion, the British said that on Leil Shabbat that they are going to leave, and they time it in a way that to handicap the Jews somehow, because if Shabbat and they can't call soldiers, they can't function optimally, and they were clearly pro-Arabs against the Jews. Ben Gurion took, however, the initiative, and he declared the independence of a Jewish state that he called it the State of Israel. It was only 3 hours before Shabbat in May. Now I'm talking to you also 3 hours before Shabbat, and he first and he read the Megillat Atzmaut, the document of the independence, and he did say that that it is after the establishment is gonna be place for the gathering of the exiles of all the Jews. The state will develop the land for all its citizens. The state will guarantee liberty and justice and peace for all its citizens. And he specified it doesn't matter their religion or their creeds or their belief. It will guarantee full social equality and full access to all the government positions and to anything that they want. Of course, it does govern. It does guarantee religious of freedom, and it will protect the holy sites of all religions. And it did happen. I want to contrast that in the 19 years that the Jordanians controlled East Jerusalem from 1948 to 1967, not one synagogue was stayed up. They destroyed all of them, and they only really 4 public buildings remained in the Jewish quarter. Look now in Israel what I mean. They protected all mosques and all churches, and that's how they behave. They have really a message of peace. They extended their hand to the neighbors, and that's what Ben Gurion said in that Megillat Atzmaut. Now we can see that Israel not only survived when no one expected that it is gonna survive. It thrived. Now it is one of the great nations on earth. I do not want to go through details of how it is, how we conclude that, because if we're gonna talk about advances in science and in all fields of science, it will يخلق زمان بما لا يخلق. It will take so long. But I want to present just few summary of those. One of them is that the average lifespan in Israel is 82. It's the top 14 nation on earth. There is something called score of happiness, even though it is surrounded by enemies. Even the terrorists always do their deeds. The Israelis are one of the happiest people on earth. They have more university graduates per capita than any other country. They translate foreign books to Hebrew more than any other country per capita. And when I was in Israel, I like to go to bookstores, and you see books from Arab authors, Tawfiq al-Hakim and Najib Mahfouz, and even Palestinians that they are translated to Hebrew. They have more museums per capita in the world, and indeed they thrive, just like what Ben Gurion said, which he took from the book of Yeshaya, or like Goyim, that became a light to the nations. They are teaching them how to improve themselves, and I don't want again to go to any of this, except there is one field that I have interest in, and that is the water management. Israel, they are leaders in saving water by educating the kids and the family, by reusing it. A lot of it is reusable, and the good part, the majority of the water that is used in agriculture is reused. They treat it so it will be palatable, but for sure it will be good for agriculture. It is they know how to utilize it. They invented the drip irrigation. They are by far probably one of the only country that they have practical desalination plants in Israel, and now they are doing them in many other countries in the world. In fact, only 2-3 years ago in San Diego, in California, they put plant because California was plagued with lack of water, so they help them there. They invented the technology to detect leak early, because I understood that leak is good part of waste of water, in a way that they don't need to stop the water. They know where is a leak, and they set the pigs to put the pieces together without the water. They are teaching this technology to many African countries, and we do know from the level of tzedakah that teach somebody how to improve themselves is the highest tzedakah that anyone can give. Harambam did say that teach somebody how to trade or profession and help him to start is the best. We do know what's going on with the corona now. It is the first country that, as of this coming Sunday, no more mask. The pandemic is finished in the state of Israel. Many people, they are calling Israel, how you did that, how you were able to vaccinate everyone and reach herd immunity before anyone else. It's quite remarkable, and the biggest Kiddush Hashem. So we just read recently in the Pesach, in Passover, that that they يسام دبر لقمايم بأرץ يعلم وصايمايم ويوشب شام راميم ويخونين رعيم وشاب, that he made the water in the desert. It is incidentally the only country that has more tree now than had 50 years ago, the only one. Because they plant millions and millions of trees are being planted. The difference is that although it is not mentioned clearly in the Megillat Atzmaut that what they are doing is inspired by the Tanakh, but it is. There was political issue, there was issue with nationalistic approach at that time that was not conducive to that, but it is rather. So this is the difference. One I couldn't help but to see the difference in the two neighboring countries, their approach to what they have, and what one did and when the other undid what they had before. I firmly believe that we are in Messianic era. I had a friend of mine for dinner Leil Shebaish El Pesach, and he brought nice bottle of wine, and it is from the Shomron area. And on the Shemini Shel Pesach, we read, Od ta'u keramim b'arei Shomron, nata'u keramim v'hillelu. I told him that, you know what, Yeshaya said that thousands of years ago, 2,500 years ago. He said that we are seeing it under our own eye, how the land of Israel is being rebuilt by its own people, and it did not allow any other one to build it. And we are becoming light into the nation. We can see that although we can't appreciate that what's going on because it's going slow, but it is accelerating, and we hope that the Yemot Mashiach and the Mashiach will come soon, hopefully in our lifetime. Shabbat Shalom to all, and Hag Atzmaut Sameach. They throw it.